Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Mindful Muslim podcast. I'm your host, Ayesha Aslam, the founder of Sakoon Counselling Services, a systemic therapist, and a proud mother of three. Our goal here is to empower you to live better lives. In today's episode, Parenting Through Patience, we're going to explore how parents can support their children through stressful exam period. Exams are not just challenging for students, they're also stressful for parents too. We all want our children to do well, but how do we encourage them without adding pressure? To help unpack this, I'm joined by an incredible panel of experts who bring diverse perspectives as a therapist, teacher, holistic health practitioner, and parents. We have Moeez Siddiqui, an integrative Muslim therapist. He's been working in the mental health since 2014 in hospitals and community settings before he joined Sakoon in 2023. He's also a father of two children. We have Zinat Ehsan, a secondary school teacher with over 13 years of experience and a parent coach. As a mother of three, originally from West Midlands and now in London with her family, she's passionate about trauma-informed teaching, inspired by Gabor Mate, Peter Levine, and creating positive learning environments. And finally, we have Dr. Shahana Hokali, a holistic health practitioner who integrates energetic coaching, functional medicine, and evidence-based treatments to help individuals thrive with a background as a clinical research scientist. She focuses on addressing root causes of stress and well-being, and she's also a mother of three children. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Ayesha.
Thank you.
So why are things so different now? I was thinking the other day, when I was younger, I don't remember going to my parents or even thinking about tuition. I just got on with it. But today it seems like children need so much more support, tutors, revision plans, parent involvement. Why do you think that? Have things really changed, or is it just our perception?
I think a lot of the times when people are seeking tuition, it's because they want to support their child. And I think it's the education. I think parents have evolved. Obviously, my parents were first immigrants into the country. So they were just sort of surviving, I guess, looking for a job, trying to make ends meet. Whereas we've sort of evolved from that and we want the next stage. That's my thinking.
Yeah, for me also, I feel exactly what Zinat said, but also the environment has, the market has changed. So there's a lot more, before there weren't so many graduates now, and now, young people are coming out with degrees, with very impressive CVs and still struggling to get a job in the workplace. So I feel like the pressures of what's on the other side has really changed. So the bar has been raised a lot more. And in our time, I didn't have internet. And I think that has really changed a huge amount. And I think Zinat will be more, able to answer this question. But I think I understand that from 2014 to now, there's been a change in the way, assessments are done as well and exams are done, which is also added. And there's been studies in this where they've measured the changes from 2014 to 2019 to show the difference and the pressures on young people these days.
Definitely, I agree with what you've said there. I think also the access to almost like the whole world. The children have got so much information in front of them, and so have the parents. And I think that is alone. You can get a teacher for Arabic, for example, from Egypt to teach you Arabic, and you can do the Arabic GCSE, in schools here. So yeah, I mean the diversity now that we have online is incredible, and the amount of education we have access to.
So I do feel there's so much knowledge, and it's just expanded. It's literally just at our screens, whereas in our time that wasn't the case at all. But just sort of connecting to sort of the timeline that you were talking about, Shan, I was actually looking at a website, the Child Commissioner's Governor's website. And in December 2020, I'm thinking about lockdown, because lockdown created a lot of changes. And in that report, it was looking at children's thoughts on exams. And 40% of children wanted exams to be adapted. So they didn't just want exams, they wanted to be assessed in different ways. And 25% actually said they wanted exams to be delayed. And many felt uncertain whether exams were going to happen or not during that time period. And when we think about lockdown, there was about 5 or 6 months out of school. And they felt that students actually shared that they didn't feel that they could catch up as well. So I'm just curious around what are your ideas around lockdown and the impact that that's had on the education system, on us as parents, on children, even as therapists, when we have clients. Have you noticed any changes when people come to us?
So for me, I was doing a lot of work online supporting people during lockdown. I was based in Hong Kong, where lockdown was a longer process, actually, a time period. It's about 3 years. Children were kind of doing work. And the mental health. So first off, they were desocialized. So, interaction with other people became a bit daunting when they re-entered. And the other thing was, as much as learning can be done online, the onus was really, when you're doing online learning, the onus was very much on the child. And often they were at home, they were had to be self-motivated. Parents were busy doing their own jobs and looking after their own, other kids. It was a very difficult period for children, the ones that could motivate themselves and, really thrived. And the ones that obviously you have to look at the characteristics of that child. It's very individual, but the group that really, there'd be a much wider gap between the levels of the children, I found.
Yeah, I agree with you there. That was certainly evident. Where if you look at the exam results pre-COVID and compare them to after, you will see huge differences. And we've just managed, I think this last year, we just managed to sort of bridge the gap. And how I think that was it's been about 3 years now? Yeah, it's taken about 3 years to bridge that gap. So, schools are facing also attendance at schools. It's gotten really bad in the sense that children are ready to attend school. And we don't know whether that's a combination of obviously what happened during COVID, but also, a lot of the social media as well. I think that's also exacerbating the problem. So we have had to change a lot of things at school in order to allow, children to be more open. So, for example, before we'd question them, why are you late? Now we get told, don't ask why you're late. Just say, oh, I'm really happy to see you. We really missed you yesterday. Or how are you doing? We've really learned now to change our language around that and offer that sort of almost emotional support. I think that's what it is that children really need at the moment in schools, hugely. I don't know if you've experienced that, Moise, if you've heard that from parents, children at home.
I have some clients, particularly parents, during the pandemic and have kind of difficulties with, I've had inquiries and people come to me like this, their children's behavior, the attendance being affected a lot recently. And a lot of it, like you said, I think, Sean, about, the desocialization and these have an impact. So I don't have, my children aren't as old as yours are, but my eldest, she's only three and a half. For her, going to school is all about the social aspect. She's going to nursery at the moment, so she goes there to have fun. If it was, thankfully she didn't have to go to school during pandemic, but if it was then, she probably wouldn't be going. That was her purpose, is meeting her friends, making friends, playing, and all of that. So I can definitely, and from the clients I've seen, is like, yeah, I had a client who, like, they were getting into violent behavior, not attending, and there's also the aspect of neurodivergence that becomes an extra we call difficulty in the social aspect of school. So yeah, I can understand like how it really does impact them probably much later when kids are older, to all those aspects. Probably also even social media, and parents now have to be much more on top of, rather than maybe back in the day, yeah, parents would be like, okay, kids going to school, I'm working, and there's completely like a disconnect. Okay, parents are working, and you're not expecting much, input or curiosity from the parent with their child, and now you're expected to be a lot more involved with it for good reasons. I think it's been a
And I definitely feel there's been a huge increase in mental health awareness for children, for parents, for community, for societies, for schools as well. And I think at Sakoon, we've definitely noticed a huge increase in children attending therapy, parents coming, and a huge increase in anxiety and stress and depression, even self-harm, because of the amount of pressure that it's had on not just children, but also for families as well. Being in such a confined space in lockdown, it either helped or it hindered families because they found it so difficult to be in a confined space when they're so used to being out and having their own personal spaces. But again, I know that was back then and that was lockdown, but it's interesting to hear that sort of timeline of how it was for us when we were children to how things have developed and changed and adapted, how technology has got better, how we've had lockdown happening and lots of other factors that have got involved, which has resulted in changes. So when we think about today and our children today, what would you say it's like to be a child during exams? What do you think are the challenges, the common stresses that our children face?
I'll talk about the parents. I think parents are a lot more aware these days about the challenges and the stresses that their child is facing. And I think they're a lot more supportive towards their children. That's what I've experienced and I've seen. And they'll often ask me, how can I support my child? Whereas I feel like back in the days, in our time, it was all like the parents were sort of oblivious, I think, and we were sort of made to, just get on with it, I guess. And it is a lot of parent input. Parents are getting stressed. The mums are, preparing the timetable, the revision timetables for the children. That's my take on it. Yeah.
I think, it's so different when we were growing up. The thing that I remember is there wasn't any pressure. I don't know. Maybe, my parents just didn't have expectations from me. They just thought, whatever she does is going to be okay, because it was always going to be one better from what they had, being, first generation, second generation immigrants. And so, but that pressure wasn't there. So if you came home with whatever grade you came home with, you passed. So that, I guess, was different. And also you had the culture was emotional support, even though they wouldn't necessarily have the same kind of awareness about mental health, but you have home comforts, very kind of, you went home and it wasn't the same environment as it was outside. It was a very enclosed, secure kind of, sometimes it wasn't, it was not good. I definitely wanted to rebel from that a little bit, but it provided stability. Whereas what I find different now is children, sometimes the awareness by the family, the parents, means you can't escape from it. You're talking about it at school, you're talking about it with the teachers, you have to like delivered to whatever homework you've been set, but then you come home and then your parents are asking you detailed questions. There is an expectation, oh, have you got this? Are you? So, I mean, I'm not saying everywhere, but it can be that they don't get to have a break from it because we are so invested in their well-being and their in them succeeding that it's a very fine line, right? So yeah, and again, same as the children, parents have got so much resource these days. They feel like they've got to throw everything in the kitchen sink at the child to help them succeed, and that can be a lot of pressure.
Absolutely. And I was also just connecting to, I think pressure is a really powerful term. And I think that's definitely something I can connect with my daughter. And also just when I think about clients and just the shift in what's been going on. But I do feel there was still pressure back then, but maybe in a different way. I think I remember growing up and it was just 3 fields that you had to get into: medicine, accountancy, and what was the other one? Computing, I think it was. I can't remember. And everything else was just, you don't do that. That's not what you do. So there was this pressure. And I think there was also gender differences. So I think my brothers had more pressure than I do. And it was almost like, well, you're going to get married, so it doesn't really matter. So there was some of these attitudes back then. However, I still feel pressure is there, but perhaps differently, because as you were mentioning, Zinat, as well, parents have evolved and they're more educated, they're more aware of the importance of being involved. I think mental health as well, there was very little awareness of depression and anxiety in our time compared to now, and hence why parents are more involved. But I'm just thinking, I think there's a lot of, like you've mentioned, there's so much pressure to get the right grades. If you don't get the grades, you're not going to get to do A levels in a particular school. And this is something I'm going through with my daughter, is that we need to get this particular grade in order to do your A levels. And if you don't get that, then you can't go into that school. And then it comes to university and your degrees and what do you want to be. So there's so much pressure. And I think it's a real big jump from being in year 9, year 10, to then going into year 11, and you're already having to think about your future at such a young age. 15, you've got to be thinking about, what do I want to be? And if you don't choose the right subjects, it impacts you. You may have to repeat your A levels. You may not be able to get the degree you want. So I think there's a lot of pressure, and fear of failure is something that I've sort of come across with a lot of children. Is they feel that they're going to fail. They feel they're going to let their parents down. They feel that they're going to let themselves down. They feel that their teachers are going to be feeling let down. I think, and I think, Zinat, how you were talking about language as well in schools. Why are you late? And I think there is some pressure of, why are you not getting the right grades? And how come, if you don't get this grade, then this is what's going to happen. So I think there's still some sort of language that impacts children. And I don't know if that's something that you guys have come across, but there is this pressure that children feel they have to be here at this bar that you're mentioning, Sean, and not just be okay with where they're at. And it's really difficult. And I think as parents, we're pressured with competition with other parents as well. Everyone else has got a tutor, or maybe we need to get a tutor for our children as well. So there's all this that's going on. And then sometimes you may have different parenting styles. So sometimes I have a different approach to my husband. And then it's about, how do we support our children in the right way?
I also feel like that schools have not evolved. They are trying. In terms of assessment, there's been no evolution. Us as teachers in class, we are told we need to adapt our lessons to suit the neurodivergent children, right? However, they still all sit the same exam. There's no difference in the exams. So it's like, what are we doing here for our kids that need that support, that need that, extra help? There are glimmers, very, very small changes that we've made at my school, where our language, the way we talk to children, our daily interactions with the children, sort of, for example, we are told to stand near the door, ask them, how's your day? being hello, good morning. You know, in terms of behavior management, I've learned a lot about this just through my parenting coaching. And to discipline your child, you know, I mean, there's certain words that you would choose, but it really does come down to connection. And I feel like if you can connect on a small level with any child, they will listen to you. They will put their things down. They will open their minds, and you will have some sort of like interaction with them, you know, even if they're the most closed off child. And I've seen that at school. I really have seen that. And I think that's where teacher training, I think it really does need to evolve in that area in particular, you know. And I feel like the government really need to change the way they're assessing children as well, 100%. And I think that's what we're sort of fighting against. Us as parents, we're just trying to do our best, I think. You know, we're trying to be there holistically for our children. We're trying to emotionally support them, but ultimately they've got to sit the same exam as everyone else.
Yeah.
You know, so where do you go from that?
And I think that's a really important point, Zenith, is that if the system doesn't change from the top, it's not really helping everyone, because they're boxing everybody in. This is how you've got to do things. So you've got to have the exams, but not every child can do exams, and they are able to do things in a different way. They may be more verbally expressive, and that's the way that they learn. And there's different learning styles, but they're not taking that into account. And as a result, some people then are shaped to think that they're failures when that's not the case at all.
You spoke of pressure before, Ayesha, and I think you've hit a really important point where you say all children are different. So you've got pressure is not a negative thing. It can be a positive thing. Some children and adults really thrive when pressure is applied. And so you've got the other group where they're indifferent to pressure. They really don't, you know, it's even, you know, you can apply whatever pressure, but they're very, unaffected by it. And then you've got the group, which really we need to be mindful of, that suffer from very high anxiety from the pressure. And that's the group that we need to safeguard, actually. And as a parent, you really need to know which category your child fits into first and foremost. And so once you have the understanding, pressure can have detrimental impact on those children. From, studies have shown that children can actually, with high anxiety, they can drop 2 GCSE grades in an exam. And so it's not about getting them to study more, getting them to have more tutoring. Those children really need to be taught how to handle the anxiety related to the pressure, which brings me to think, because when they have high anxiety, their cognitive behavioral is impaired, their memory is impaired, their ability to manipulate information is impaired, and their overall mental health is affected. So identifying your child and which groups your child fits into is very important. And then following that is finding a way that you can support your child with the anxiety. Children, I find that schools like yours, Zina, are great at preparing them with the information and knowledge. I'm totally in agreement with you. Terminal, examinations of, at the end of 2 years I find it shocking, because again, some kids will do better than the others, but really supporting those children is key. And I think some schools are starting to realize that they need to do that, but I don't think there's enough resourcing or funding available in this area. So I think comes back to parents kind of finding a way to connect, like you say, as a teacher to connect with the children, but as parents also finding a way to connect with your child, going for walks without devices, really being able to go on. I have dates with my children. They're all different ages, total different groups. So with my 6-year-old, we have a coffee shop that we go to and have a date, and he loves it. He loves when I pick him up and we just go and hang out. And he sits opposite me and he says, "Mummy, what should we talk about? Let's chat." I think it's harder with my older one because they are less and less interested to spend time with you. It's really important to be able to connect with your child in a way when not just in the practical way of, I try my best with revision. I find myself nagging my children a lot, and I'm trying to bite my tongue because I think I should know better. But it's very, very hard as a parent because you want to support them. But finding a way to help with their anxieties and manage that, I think, is probably a real high priority for parents, knowing the situation as it is.
Thank you, Sean. And I think that's a really key point because the two go hand in hand, don't they? There's the academic pressure, there's the social pressure, there's the emotional pressure. And you're touching on anxiety and stress. And I was wondering, Muiz, would you be able to maybe share what are some of the signs that parents or others can notice when it comes to children being stressed?
Yeah, thank you. I've noticed this even in my child, like, them not waking up at time, them not waking up in time to go school. And my daughter is not of compulsory age. So, she's not 5 yet. So we don't have to worry too much if she's getting late or something. But, recognizing like what they go throughout the day, if they're going to school for the whole day from, let's say my child right now goes from 8:40 to 3:10 p.m., it's like, okay. And then if you think about older children, it's much more intense. So I think there's also been studies about like the sleep matters a lot for children. And I think that's something that, pun intended, is slept on as a topic of like children and their sleeping patterns, because they're developing, they need a lot more sleep. Adults, we are fine. We can do, I don't know, 6 hours, 5 hours, whatever. We can manage. But a child who's growing, their brain hasn't developed, their body hasn't developed. They need a lot more time. I think like it's something that, again, as Zeenat, you're talking about with adaptations of schools needing to adapt and evolve, is that schools are still like, maybe the school opening times are still too early for children. If they need like 10 or so hours, more hours, because their brain and everything needs more time to develop, and if the child is not waking up on time and you're having to shake them awake and all of that, that's telling like, okay, maybe they are tired, maybe they are stressed, maybe all kinds of reasons. And so schools have to adapt to that. And there are some countries or some special schools that have later times, and they find that the exam results do get better. But yeah, like as we're talking about, is connecting with your child. Empathy is so important. I think as parents, we have the pressure from the school, and we're trying to deal with that, but also trying to be there for our child, be empathetic, be non-judgmental, not to be nagging, and trying to like connect with our child. Imagine if we were like children, because there's a huge impact of like how your relationship is with your child and how they grow up. As we talk about like with trauma, with the critical period, with development, these early years are crucial. And how we are as parents are going to affect them for the rest of their lives. You get a load of pressure doing exams from your parents on top of your teachers, then that's going to take you all the way into adulthood, and that can create traumas in of itself. So it's picking up on those signs, like, I only mentioned sleep, but I think that's one of the big ones. Noticing your child, like, yeah, if their behavior, if they're having more temper tantrums, if they're getting more aggressive, that's probably telling like, okay, they are stressed. Are they quick to anger? Are they quick to cry? That's telling like, okay, something is not quite right here. The emotional regulation, obviously the children, it's not going to be there, right? And that's what you're there as a parent. You're supposed to be like, okay, you have to be empathizing with, okay, the child is at this stage, and you have to kind of be able to like adjust yourselves in your parenting style.
Thank you, Maiz. And absolutely, I think it's really, really important that we recognize these signs. I remember a case, and it just took me back. A parent called and just said, my child is out of control. They've got behavior issues. They're having tantrums. They're usually really a perfect child. They always behave. They listen. They never rebel. And all of this is happening, and thinking it was black magic or a jinn possession. And I was thinking, and when we sort of explored a little bit of the background, she was going through exams. And I said, okay, and then we sort of connect to her sort of studies, and we were talking a little bit about that. Then when I spoke to the daughter, she was just saying it's really stressful, and there's so much pressure that she has to get A's and A stars. And there was all these different things that were going on for her, and she just couldn't control her emotions, and it just erupted. And it was having to really educate the parents as well that actually this is very normal, because for them it was a very abnormal experience, and they couldn't really understand why their child has changed, and it was unacceptable. So it was really about trying to help the parent to understand what was actually going on and what they needed to do. So recognizing the signs of stress, how to support them. The other day, my daughter had a headache. And I just thought, right, she's stressed out. So got her a cup of tea, which I don't usually like to do, but that's her favorite go-to. So I said, come on, let's have a cup of tea, a little massage. She had a bit of time out, watched one of her programs, and then she was back to her normal self. But it was really having to not just, it's a really, I don't know about you, but it's a real hard balance to sort of discipline them and say, right, get back to your studies. And to also say to them, you need some time out. And I think it's that push and pull as a parent to have to be there, because they can procrastinate and then they can just start ending up not doing any work. And then it's that other side of they do too much, that they get so tense and they get so stressed out. And it's really hard, I think, as a parent as well, to really get that right balance, because you want them to relax, but at the same time, you don't want them to relax too much. And Sean, I think you made a really important point. Every child is different. So some children thrive in learning in a particular way, and other children thrive in different ways. So with each of my children, I have to, and I'm still learning and still trying to find the right way, but I'm always trying to find, okay, this might work for this child, this works for a different child. So I would use mind maps for my daughter, because it worked for me, but now she's starting to engage with that. With my son, it will be a different sort of learning tool. He loves laptops and IT and doing things and presentation slides. So it's having to get him to use that to help him with his education. But yeah, it's really tough. But I think as parents, we really do need to recognize them signs of stress. And something did come in my mind as well, because I was thinking about, and I think there's research as well, about over-testing children. So I know that children are having over 2 or 3 mock tests before the actual exam. And I don't know whether that's leading children to feel overwhelmed, or is it helping them to become resilient? I was curious about your thoughts.
Personally, I do feel like they are beneficial, just because it helps them to manage their time, and also realize that, this is how the exams are going to be. So we try and make them as close to the actual real thing as possible in terms of time frame. And it just helps them to also recognize areas that they need to improve on. So I feel like, especially those children that really are struggling with anxiety, stress, it just gives them a bit of almost like a trial run before the actual thing. But, it's really interesting when you're talking about parents and how they see their children at home and how the daily interactions. It is so crucial and so important that they are sort of watching the cues, and having some almost like some foresight into their child's day. So they might not even be aware that their child has had a tough day at school. Could be friendship issues, could be anything. And then their child's coming home and they're getting nagged about revision. It's so important for us to just stop and just take a breath and just to observe sometimes. Because I think we do, obviously we're busy, we work, life gets stressful, and it's tough, isn't it? It really is a juggle a lot of the times. But I just think one tip is just to stop and observe. I think just observing will give you so much information about your child. Yeah.
And I think that leads us really nicely into how, as parents, can we help our children without adding more pressure? So what are some of the practical things that we could do?
I'll start with some thoughts. I think what you said, Ayesha, about that research has shown that they didn't, like your case where the parent actually didn't relate it back to the exam. There's more studies that show that actually children are belittled and their the experiences are diminished when it comes to relating to exams compared to adults. And I think it's really important to acknowledge your child emotions and really, because they feel seen, and it's important for all of us to be seen. And whatever reason that your child is in that frame having anxiety, to be able to understand that is their snapshot of where they are at that moment, and not to have expectations of, well, you should be dealing with it better, or this is not a big deal. It's just that is how they are coping at that moment, and to acknowledge them and really hold space for that child. And holding space, not everybody knows how to hold space, so maybe you can expand on that a little bit, Ayesha. But it's really important to be able to hold that space, like Zinat, you said, when the children come home, and often they will hold everything in when they're at school because they're outside, right? And they come home and they just let it all thingy out, and they're comfortable. They will get aggressive, or they may show anger, but it's really understanding that there is more to this, maybe perhaps than whatever they're just misbehaving. Also, just for me personally, navigating teenage emotions and versus the exam stress or school day has been a real tricky. The hormonal changes, trying to decipher which one is it today. So yeah, it's a juggling act. I think it's tough for parents, but all we can do is hold space, connect with them, let them know we're here, and make it a safe space for them to non-judgmental. You said that at the beginning, Ayesha. I think those are important. And movement. Children who do some sort of exercise or in the exam pressures, they can drop all of these activities that they normally have as part of their normal day-to-day. But it's really important for them to keep that up during stressful times.
I think also just keep the days relatively free as well. Don't pack too much in your day. If you've been out somewhere, realize that they probably need to sort of, when they get home from that. And yeah, so if you are looking for them to do revision or get some work done, just keep the weekend or keep the evening relatively free where they've not got much going on. And maybe keep a routine as well. And, ask them, don't say, oh, you better do your revision, or that's just confrontational. Saying things like, when are you planning on doing revision this evening? Or what times can I help you with anything? Think open questions like that are really beneficial, rather than just sort of putting them in a almost like you could say, a box, I guess. What else? I think good nutrition as well, just making sure they've got some healthy snacks and things like that, available. And yeah, generally just being there and being open. And if they say can't be bothered, then maybe just let it be. Okay, we'll try again tomorrow. It's not the be all and end all. It really isn't. I think the biggest thing for us as parents is that we want our children to be well mentally, because, you know, even if they do get the amazing grades, but emotionally and mentally they can't progress from that. I think that would be the biggest tragedy. So yeah, just be open. That's all.
No, I agree, Sean and Zeenat, with what you're saying, particularly about like, and I think like about holding space for your children. And I think like the home should be that safe space, that place where they can unwind, they can vent. And if we bring our pressure or our anxiety into it, our stress into it, you know, if we project that onto our children, because we can do that. We got busy lives, we can have stress in our work and stuff. And if we put that on our child when they come home and then we hear like, oh, okay, they're not doing well in school or something, and then we get on their case. So the home is not safe anymore. So they don't want to be, some children probably don't even want to come home if it's such a toxic environment. You know, they just want to then hang out with their friends because maybe that's a less judgmental space. So I think that's huge. I think in terms of tips, like with my daughter, I often like to, when we go to school, we talk to her, like I talk to her like, okay, what would you like to do today? And who would you like to play with? You know, she's still 3, obviously, but like, yeah, like, you know, finding out about her social life in school. Sean, you brought up about holding it in until they get home. My daughter was literally holding in her bowels and not going to school in the first few weeks in the school she's at right now. And I kind of like, we had to coach her. It's okay. You can use the potty over there, and you just have to tell the teachers and you know, talking to the teachers like, okay, how is her, you know, going to the potty, and like her then developing that confidence. So all that stuff, you know, sometimes people are literally holding in things, and the home should be that place to be unwind, but also just being curious, like Zeenat, you're saying the open questions is a huge thing. If we lead with like, or we're leading questions or closed questions, we're not showing curiosity. And then the child is going to be like, oh, my parent doesn't really care. They just only care about my grades. And there's no connection then. And then when there's no connection, it doesn't feel safe at home. It doesn't feel like a nice environment. So they'll just close off, withdraw, stay in their room, not come for dinner.
Thank you. And it's making me think about the different stages of development. So we go from young children all the way up to teenagers and even beyond, I've been told as well. It never ends. Parenting never ends, but it's creating that healthy environment for your children, knowing what you could do, how you can adapt as a parent. That's something I've learned, is how to adapt. How I do things doesn't necessarily mean it's the same for my children. And every child is different. So not putting them into a particular box, even though schools may do that, but hopefully there will be some change taking place. But yes, definitely creating that supportive environment, helping them with their planning. But I think children don't like to be told what to do, just like we don't like to be told what to do. So sort of sharing with them and speaking to them like a mini adult. Now, when would you like to, so giving them the sort of the authority and getting them to share with us when they would like us to help. That's when they really engage and they really connect with you. And modeling healthy habits. So like you mentioned, Moiz, it's really about parents modeling how to manage anxiety, how to manage stress, but also eating healthy, exercising, going out for a walk, drinking, nutrition. All of these are so important. So going back to them basics and being that cheerleader. So really celebrating them small achievements, but also that education is not everything. That's all they're worth. They're far more than that. And I think sometimes as parents, we just focus just on education, but we need to also get them to recognize all their other talents and all their other abilities and their skills and offer emotional support. So we've talked a lot about that, which is lovely, alhamdulillah, that we don't just jump to solutions and we sort of just be there for them. I am just aware of time, so I'm just going to say that you've also shared about parents what we could avoid doing. So I think we've already touched on it, overloading expectations and not expecting so much from them. Another key one is comparing to others. That's a huge one. Oh my gosh, your brother, your sister was much better. Or look at your cousin or your friend, they're getting the grades, you're not. What's going on? So the comparison is a really big one. And ignoring the signs of stress. And I don't know if and it might be nice for all of you just to share your closing remarks and any resources you feel could be helpful for anyone that's listening.
Okay. I think it's just, there is no magic guidebook. Your child is an individual who you know best what that child needs, and connect and have fun and bring joy into that relationship, and that will really always keep an open space. There is a lot of important things that we as parents need to do, very serious things that we need to instill in them, but to balance it off with being there for them emotionally, I think is the key.
I think I'd like to leave the word with you, curious. I think just stay curious, and I think that will really get you through the exam prep period with your children. Stay curious, and just keep in the back of your mind that everything will work out and it'll all be fine. It always is. It always is.
I think much like, I'll take this from person-centered therapy, Rogerian therapy, is unconditional positive regard. We do that with our clients. There for our clients. We need to do the same for our kids, no matter what age they are, and also trust them, as been mentioned, not to belittle them, and not being their friend, putting on that different hat. You don't always have to be like on a parent level, connecting with them like a friend, being a cheerleader, that fun, that joy. Sean, you mentioned about the dates with your child, going to a coffee place. All of that builds that relationship. So it's not just like when they come home, you're working and there's no connection. So yeah, I think that unconditional positive regard, unconditional love, particularly in relation to their studies, I think very important.
Thank you so much. Them gems, inshallah, is going to help so many people out there that are listening. And I just want to say, for parents who are looking for extra support, there are some really great resources out there. There are apps that can help. Or for children, students, learners who are listening, there's time management and stress apps. The one that I wanted to share is the one that we have, which is called the MuslimMoodFit App. And this can help with managing anxiety. It's a research-based app that is shown to be effective in improving one's well-being. It's easy to use, and it can be customized to fit individuals' needs. It's free at present, and it has many features, ways to track your mood, record your thoughts, talks on anxiety, and ways to increase motivation in your life, mindfulness exercises, and coming soon will be enhanced stats, mood duas, and community support where we can speak to each other, and much more. There's also education platforms. There's examples like Khan Academy, BBC Bite Size that offer fantastic free revision support, helpline and support networks. So if your child is really struggling, don't hesitate to seek professional help. Details of myself and our amazing team at Sakoon Counselling. We offer counselling for individuals, couples, and families, and we have many other projects in the background. I just wanted to wrap up and get everyone to remember that exams are just one part of our children's journey. Their success isn't just about grades. It's about growth, resilience, and well-being. And when we think about Islamically, seeking knowledge is an obligation, but it includes balance and trust in Allah's plan. And as Allah says in the Quran, in Surah Najm 53, verse 39, and that there is not for man except that good for which he strives. The effort they put in matters more than the outcome. And as the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in Ibn Majah, seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim. Our role as parents is to encourage that effort while trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom. So let's end with this. Success is the sum of small efforts, repeated day in and day out. So let's encourage our children to take one step at a time and remind them you're in their corner no matter what. And if you found today's episode helpful, please share it with other parents, with other students, anyone that you feel who could benefit from it. And we'd love to hear from you. So what's your best tip for supporting children during exams? Drop us a message or comment on our socials. But until next time, take care and look after your little champions. And thank you so much to my guests for coming. You've made it really rich and insightful for everyone. Thank you so much. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.